Hey YouTube, what's up? Thanks for tuning in. Here it's again the awesome 1 to 12 Willys Jeep by RocHobby eShine FMS. I love it, as you saw in my first video about this awesome tiny truck. And in this video, as promised, I will take a deeper look inside and disassemble the 1 to 12 Willy. But first, let's talk a little bit about this new radio and let's take a closer look to this new radio. That's a totally different radio than came with the elder Hobby Plus RocHobby FMS models, and I tested it, and unfortunately it does not bind. I did not succeed binding those super nice small turbo racing Hobby Porter receivers to those or to this radio. The radio has a ton of functions. Manual explains everything, but it's a little bit complicated. First of all, it does have two LEDs in front. If battery is low, those will blink slowly, and they will blink also if the radio doesn't have a connection, so lost connection. So if we switch off the car now, it should start to blink. Now it blinks. And if we switch it on, blinking stops. And inside the radio there are a ton of buttons. And beside the on-off button, the most important button is this one, the A and B mode button. So in A mode, as it is here now, you cannot switch any lights, and you have to go to B mode, and then throttle trim plus and minus are the light switches, plus for the beams and the dark light and the rear lights, and minus for those blinking lights. And what's very important for many of you, I know, check it now, I do not have those ugly blinking lights on now. I can turn without blinking. How did I do this? Therefore I will go first to the factory settings. You see here is a reset button. Therefore you have to be in mode A. So I'm in mode A now, and I turn the steering wheel and press the reset button. And now the truck is as it comes from factory. You see the main beams are on, and those ugly blinking lights blink. Turning lights, I don't think a Willys Jeep does have turning lights. And if you want to change this, therefore you have to go to mode B. You can't do anything in mode A with the lights. And I will show you now how to switch off those ugly blinking lights. So go to mode B, and then throttle trim minus is the button for those blinking lights. You see now blinking lights are on. I press this throttle trim minus once. Now we have the cool hazard lights, and I press it again, and now we do not have any blinking or hazard lights here anymore. If I press it again once, we have this blinkers, those blinkers, factory settings, and now hazard lights. And the throttle trim plus button is the button for the main beams and the rear lights. So now main beams are half. If I press once again full, now we have main beams full and this dark light, only dark light, and off. So one push, main beams half, main beams full, and main beams half and main beams full to also have rear lights on and kind of brake light. One more push, main beams full, dark light, and still rear lights on. And braking light, and one push more, only this dark light, and the rear lights are also off. And that's independent from these hazard or blinking lights. So now they are off. Now I'm in blinking mode, and now hazard lights are on again. And those settings are stored in the radio. So if I switch the truck off now, radio off, switch it on again, switch it on again, and you see the last settings, only dark light and hazard lights. Let's switch the hazard lights off, only main lights full beam, switch off, on again, and only main lights full beam. So that's what most owners probably will do first. Go switch to mode B here, go to throttle trim minus and click, and then you get rid of those turning lights. In mode A, throttle trim is throttle trim, and steering trim of course is steering trim. So you see throttle trim, only one push does already change, and one push backwards also does already change. So that's quite a sensitive ESC. And steering trim, at the end there's a loud beep, that's the maximum. And in center position there's a double beep. Come on. Okay, that's center position. So in mode A, steering trim, throttle trim. Mode B, steering trim no function, and throttle trim lights. So check mode B now, no function of steering trim. Factory reset if you want. Turn the steering wheel in mode B and press the button, and now again we have this blinking lights and main beams half. And now I'm rid of this again. There are some quite nice alarm functions shown by the lights of the truck. First of all, if it loses connection to the radio, you will see this. I switch off the radio now, and you see warning lights, the red blinking lights and the main beams. And now it's off. And additionally, what's quite nice, that's a low voltage alarm too. So that's really super nice. And therefore, to show you this, I will connect the truck to the power supply where I can adjust voltage. And I hope you can see this. 8.4 volts, so full 2S LiPo, switch it on. Everything fine, and now let's reduce the voltage. Go down to 8 volts, 7.6, 7.3, 7.2, 7 volts, 6.8, 6.6, 6.5, 6.4, 6.3. Wow. Low voltage alarm at 6.3 volts, but you see I'm now on 8 volts again. This does not stop, therefore you have to switch off the truck and switch it on again, and then the low voltage alarm is off. And I show it to you again. 7 volts, 6.9, 6.8, 6.7, 6.6, 6.5, 6.4, 6.3. And it starts at 6.3 volts, so that's quite nice. You can't easily damage your LiPo batteries. And a further function of mode A, mode A now, is the reverse function. Here's a button that's reverse, steering throttle, and steering angle adjustment. Reverse steering and throttle is in mode A, steering angle adjustment is in mode B. So I'm in mode A now. Reversing steering is easy. You see, now I have normal steering, and now I steer. And now I have reversed steering, and I steer no matter to what direction. Press the button again and correct steering. And it's the same for throttle, so I have throttle normal now, press throttle reverse, press this button again, correct throttle. And in mode B, so let's change to mode B, you have additionally the steering angle adjustment, what's not really useful. So I steer, now I have only a smaller steering angle, and now I have the highest steering angle, and now I have the highest steering angle. So 3 steering angles: full, low, medium, full, low, medium, full, low, medium. Turn the steering wheel for this and press the button in mode B. And furthermore, those 2 buttons here, channel 4 train and climbing mode, also do only work in mode B. So this training mode, in mode B, press the button and the truck will only go very slowly, and the first and second gear button does not work. Press it again and the truck will go full speed, and first and second gear will work. Of course, the first, second gear switch button will work in mode A and in mode B. You can see here, now I'm in mode A. And of course, I also can switch the gears. And in mode B, there is also this climbing mode button. And if you press it, the drag brake should be stronger. In my first video, I didn't really find a difference between climbing mode and not climbing mode, but there probably is. Now I'm in normal mode, and it's quite easy to push the car. And now I press the button, and now it's much harder. So quite cool. 2 beeps, no drag brake, and 1 beep, drag brake. So this also does work. I probably missed this in my first video. So that's it about all the functions explained, I guess. And now let's disassemble this awesome truck. First, let's take the body off. And here it is, body off. Body is mounted by 6 nice hex screws. So 2 are mounted on this position, 2 are mounted on this position. Nice sturdy screws inserted here and here on the chassis. Check the chassis and check this huge motor. Wow. But if you want to take the body off, it's not that easy with all those lights. You also will have to take off the board, what's mounted here inside, by 4 hex head screws, those ones, and those were really hard to get out. I really had troubles. I had to use quite a bit of force to get those out. Same with the screws here. You can see in the chassis 1, 2 servos, but this truck should have 3 servos, doesn't it? For the steering wheel, which is this servo, for normal steering, and of course for first and second gear. And maybe you asked yourself already, what's this box below the driver's seat? Can take the driver's seat off. Nice seat, cloth, foam. It's mounted by 4 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4. And below the driver's seat there is this closure, also closed by 4 screws. Those are now Phillips head screws, and here inside sits the servo. And if you want to take the driver's seat off, you have to remove the servo, and there are 2 large screws here. Body super nice, everything mounted by screws. Most of the stuff are clipped inside, as you can see here. So should be not super difficult to disassemble if you want to paint your body. They use a lot of screws also, Phillips head screws. And rear lights are only mounted or fixed by hot glue. The other side did already fall out. I don't really like this because the red light is shining through a lot, and I will use T7000 super black to blind those lights from inside. Every LED does have a separate plug, and for this they use 1.25mm JST GH plugs. Those ones you know from the Tiny 1S. However, tiny helicopter fiberless systems like Microspirit, Microbrain, Pico Vortex, or also the FlySky Noble micro receiver, they use 1.5mm plugs. So those plugs and also the servo plugs, which are the same 1.25mm, they will not work. You will have to get servos or plugs 1.25mm. super nicely made, not a lot of difference to the big one. Here you see the LED housings for the main beams. And those hazard blinking lights to also have special housings, so that's really quite awesome. And the board, what's ESC, receiver and light controller, that's quite awesome. Here you see the huge MOSFETs for the huge motor, the BSC, and you will find three 3-pin housings for the 3 servos, one 2mm JST PH housing for the large motor, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 small 2-pin JST GH 1.25mm housings for all 7 lights. So it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7 LEDs, and every LED does have its own housing, or every plug of each LED does have its special separate housing. Recommend to take pictures before disassembling. Those I marked the plugs with colors to what will it make it easier to reassemble it correctly. The board does not seem to be waterproofed, conformal coated, as far as I can see here now. Don't think so. And it's mounted by double-sided tape. I won't remove it now because here there's not a lot of, it doesn't make a lot of sense to use different electronics in this truck. The light controller honestly is absolutely top. So really thumbs up. Awesome. The ESC does work really good, much better than the ESCs of all the other ready to run Hobby Plus, RocHobby, EasyRC, FMS models, the small ones, and it will be super difficult to change all those electronics to better ones, if there are better ones. Mainly the light controller. I really think they did an awesome job here, and it's super tiny. That's the space for the battery. Don't know if it will be easily possible to use a larger battery. One would have to try. If you would remove this, you could use maybe a little bit longer 2S LiPo, but I don't really see a need for a larger LiPo. We'll see how long this LiPo will, how long the runtime with this LiPo 380 milliamp hours will be, and won't be a lot of work to change the LiPo when it's, I think it's better and easier to buy more LiPos and change the LiPo instead of trying to modify a lot here. This will be quite a mess to reassemble again. Let's check this again. Well, honestly, I don't see any reason why not to remove this stand here for using a larger, flatter LiPo. But for much larger LiPos, there's probably not really room here. Shouldn't be too difficult to disassemble the body and to paint it if you want to do so. I personally don't really see any need of painting it. I only want to try to remove this military stuff to make it a civilian version in green, what looks quite nice. We'll see how this works. We'll show it to you in the next video. So let's put the body away and let's take a closer look to the chassis. First of all, let's take a look at the motor. Check this out. That's a huge, huge motor compared to all the other micro trucks we know. You know what this motor is? That's one of the so-called barrage motors, which comes in the ECX Barrage and in the RocHobby Katana Atlas 6x6 and in the CR18 models. And this motor is tiny, tiny, tiny compared to the motor of the 1-12 Willy. And the barrage motor is used as upgrade motor for the SCX24. Check this out. That's an SCX24 motor. It's super tiny compared to this huge, huge motor here. And chassis components, there's a lot of metal. Here we have the leaf springs. Of course, I will disassemble them later. You see they are metal, 8 leaves per spring. Here are the drive shafts, and they are made out of metal too. And those are no telescopic drive shafts, as we are used to in nearly all the other models. It looks more or less like dog bone steering style here, but of course there's a little bit of movement possible, so that the drive shaft can change its length a little bit, but not a typical telescopic drive shaft. And made out of metal. The frame rails, they are made out of metal too, but non-magnetic, so maybe aluminum. I scratched them and you can see it here. That's metal, but not magnetic metal. Steering rods made out of metal. Here you can see the 2-speed transmission. I will take it out and show it in detail later. Yeah, what else? Looks super sturdy, super cool. Let's take a look at the wheels, which are really nice, mounted by hex nuts, 4mm. And you see there is no hex inside. The rim is directly mounted to the pin which sits on the axle here. We will disassemble this later more, and those are the super nice beadlock wheels. Let's take those apart. Mounted by 1, 2, by 6 screws. Phillips head. Plastic beadlock wheels, beadlock rims, and tires 60mm, really nice and grippy, really look and feel quite awesome. No foams inside. Beadlock ring, maybe you could put some weights inside there if you really want, but you saw the awesome climbing behavior and the low center of gravity of the 1-12 Willys. There is no need for a lower center of gravity, I guess, because it can climb nearly 55 degrees. And here this seems to be mounted to the rims by tiny Phillips head screws too. Let's take a 000 and check if we can take those off too. Yes, this can be taken off, but well, no hex, so those tires can't be easily mounted to other trucks. Maybe to the Capo Cup 1, I guess it has a similar mounting system. So 1, 2, 3, 4-part beadlock rims, plastic, awesome tires, no foam. And what next? Let's take the leaf springs and the axles off and check those. So I will reassemble the tire and then take the leaf springs off. So those caps of the front and the rear wheels are different. They look different, and maybe therefore that's the front wheel, the rear wheel, the screws or the axle, the thread of the front wheel is much larger, longer than the one of the rear wheel. But there's no further difference between front and rear wheels and tires. They are exactly the same. And here's the chassis without tires with the super hard leaf springs. Probably something for some modifications, and those kind of normal shocks, but guess there are no springs inside. We will check this later. Let's take off the axles now. So axles and leaf springs off, easy job. On the rear axles there are inside the area where the pin insides additionally 2 tiny shims. Come on, shim. Take them off not to lose them before I show you the leaf springs. And on the front axle there seems to be only one of those shims, the large one. For taking the axles off, that's the front axle, of course I had to unscrew the steering rods, which are made out of metal with plastic ball heads, so quite nicely made. Front axles, check those out. Awesome universal steering joints. We'll disassemble them later and show them in detail. Rear axles and the leaf springs, those are 8, are mounted by M2 screws. On the inside there's a countersunk screw, on the outside a socket head M2 screw, and those additional shocks are not really functional. They only keep the axle in place, so no springs inside, no oil, nothing. Plastic. Super nice axle housings, really scale, good looking. Yeah, and for taking apart those, first I will have to take off the leaf springs, and the leaf springs are mounted with those U-shaped pieces of metal with rod at the end, and each leaf spring is mounted with 4 tiny nuts, and those are really small. You will need delicate pliers or 2.5 millimeter socket head screwdriver. So to get those tiny nuts out, and to get them out of the socket head driver again. Come on. That's quite a delicate story. Now I lost it. Not super small. 2.5 millimeter outer diameter, and the screw diameter or the thread diameter is 1.5 millimeter. So let's take the leaf springs off and disassemble the axles. So here are the leaf springs, and as you can see, even 9 leaves per spring. I counted 8 first, but now after disassembling, those are those 1.5 millimeter U-shaped rods. Mounted that way. No difference between front and rear leaf springs as far as I see. Only a difference between left and right. No, that's not totally true. Oh man, there are longer and shorter ones. So which ones are the shorter ones? So the short ones seem to be okay. Short ones for front axle and long ones for rear axle. And here's quite a potential for modification, because those are quite hard, and to take some of those out, mainly in the rear, will probably make the driving behavior, the performance, the dampening even more scale than it is now. And now I will disassemble the axles. Axles! Awesome quality, check this out. Rear axle, full metal gears, nicely greased, ball bearings, no bushings. So thumbs up for this. Sturdy shafts. Wow, that's really absolutely awesome quality. Check the gears. And that's the front axle. So gears are the same. And super nice universal steering. Some O-rings here to keep the pins in. Ball bearings. Wow, 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 wow. So that's really a different quality than the cheaper 1 to 18th and 1 to 24th trucks do have. That's at least one step above. So, wow. Full metal drive shaft, full metal, full ball bearings, nice ball bearings, nicely greased, awesome scale looking, C-hubs, ball bearings, of course, screws, not only screwed through the C-hubs, no, they do have those tubes and pieces of the rear axle. So thumbs up for the axles, really. And finally, central transmission and 2-speed gearbox. Let's check those two. Central transmission. Awesome! Check this quality. Super sturdy ball bearings, metal gears, nicely greased. Absolutely awesome. Wow, wow, wow. Everything metal. That's wow. I'm totally stunned. I did not think that the quality will be that awesome. Everything metal. Okay, it's worth the price. Super, super, super nice. And that's the 2-speed transmission box with a huge motor. Check. Here you shift the gears. I did already remove the screws mounted by a ton of 2mm screws. Check it out. Nicely geared metal gears, ball bearings, nicely greased, of course, not nicely geared, probably nicely geared too. And that's gear 2 and gear 1 probably. So that's the shifting mechanism. And wow, where's the motor pinion? Okay. Check this out, guys. How awesome is this? Oh, I hope I will be able to assemble this again. Wow! So to change the motor, what's probably not necessary, will not be that easy. A ton of gears, all metal, full ball bearings, nicely greased. I'll try to insert this again. Okay, reassembling is easy. Okay. But I was afraid for nothing, but I would not yet disassemble it totally because I don't see any need. Changing the motor, nobody will change the motor. Different motor won't fit. Will not be that easy. Yeah, what can I say? Wow, wow, wow. Awesome. Really awesome. RocHobby FMS, eShine, whoever made this truck. This is absolutely awesome. What else to say? Guess I showed you everything. That's the frame with the 2 servos, servo mount. I probably don't have to remove this. Now I have to reassemble it, but I can give all thumbs up. How awesome is this tiny truck build? That's the end of the video. I guess you saw everything, and I guess you agree it's even better than I hoped. Wow, wow, wow. And in the next video I will show you some mods. Probably I will try to modify the leaf springs a little bit, take some out to make it a little bit softer. It's super hard. Maybe I can remove the military stuff here from the body. Maybe I can make it my driver more movable so that it will move with the moving steering wheel. What else to do? I will blind the rear lights as already mentioned, and that's it. Unfortunately, this truck is that awesome, there is not a lot to modify. And check all this here, I have to reassemble it. Not an easy job, but I'm quite sure after some hours and some swearing I will succeed. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next video. I'll be back.